Have you ever looked at someone and known in that instant that your life would never be the same again? That was how it felt the first time Ethan Carter looked at me across the office hallway. A glance that lingered too long, carrying a quiet charge neither of us could ignore. My name is Lauren Mitchell, 35, married to Daniel, a man who has always done everything right. He's responsible, dependable, and kind in a quiet, methodical way. We've been married for 9 years, long enough for comfort to blur into monotony. Our mornings are predictable. Coffee at 7, news headlines humming from the TV, a polite goodbye kiss that feels rehearsed more than real. There was a time when Daniel and I couldn't stop touching each other, fingers brushing in grocery store aisles, laughter echoing through our tiny apartment. But that kind of love fades quietly, not in explosions but in sighs and schedules. Now when I look at him, I see stability and absence. Then Ethan joined our firm. He wasn't like the others, younger, confident without arrogance, the kind of man who made people lean in when he spoke. His humor was easy, his attention disarming. He noticed things most people didn't. How I pushed my hair behind my ear when I was nervous, or how I always chose the corner chair in meetings. It started with harmless exchanges, small talk over coffee, shared complaints about deadlines. But beneath it all was something electric, unspoken. The way his eyes met mine felt like an invitation I hadn't realized I'd been waiting for. One evening, after everyone had left, I passed his desk on my way out. He looked up, smiled, and said, "You worked too late, Lauren." I laughed, pretending not to notice how close we were standing. "Maybe I just don't like going home early." He didn't answer right away. His expression softened, not flirtatious, just understanding. "Yeah," he said finally. "I know the feeling." That night, lying in bed beside Daniel, I stared at the ceiling, tracing patterns in the darkness. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, that it was only conversation, attention, human connection, but deep down, I knew. Something had shifted, and once that kind of thing begins, once someone sees you after you've spent years being invisible, there's no turning back. Ethan and I started orbiting each other without meaning to. Two quiet souls pretending not to notice how gravity worked. It was easy at first. A shared joke during meetings, a brief conversation by the elevator, the occasional text that always began with work but never quite ended there. Daniel remained steady, unaware. He still asked about my day, still poured my coffee, still smiled the same way he had for years. But there was a distance now. A hollow pause between our sentences, like the silence after a song ends, but before someone turns the record. Over, our marriage had become polite, predictable, safe. Ethan was none of those things. He carried a restless energy, a mix of confidence and carelessness that made him both thrilling and dangerous. When he laughed, he did it with his whole body as though life itself amused him. And when he listened, it felt like nothing else in the world existed. One rainy Thursday, we stayed late at the office, finishing a proposal. The storm outside rattled the windows, and the city lights blurred against the glass. When I stood to leave, the power flickered. Just once, enough to pull a small gasp from me. Ethan chuckled softly. "Relax," he said, his voice low, steady. "It's just thunder." I smiled, trying to hide how my pulse jumped. "I'm fine, just not a fan of surprises." "Then you must really hate people like me," he said, eyes holding mine a moment too long. Something in me shifted, a small, traitorous spark of recognition. We were both lonely, both pretending our lives were fuller than they really were. That night, I found myself replaying every word we'd exchanged. The way he said my name, the warmth in his voice, the ease. Daniel had once spoken to me that way. Before the long hours, before the quiet distance that became normal. I tried to remind myself of the vows I'd made, the life we'd built, the home that waited. But every time Ethan texted, "You home safe?" or "rough day," it chipped away at the wall I'd tried to keep standing. The messages grew longer, the pauses between them shorter. He told me about his failed engagement, about the apartment that felt too empty. I told him things I hadn't said to anyone in years, how I missed writing, how I felt like a ghost in my own marriage. We were honest in ways that felt dangerous. Looking back, maybe that was the real affair. Not the touch that hadn't happened yet, but the truth we shared when no one else was listening, and deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before honesty demanded a price. The first time Ethan touched my hand, it wasn't planned. We were leaving a client dinner, walking toward the parking lot as a soft drizzle began to fall. I slipped on the wet pavement and his fingers caught mine, firm, warm, steady. It lasted only a second, but it felt like the air between us had changed shape. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence said enough. After that night, the boundaries we'd tried so carefully to draw began to fade. Conversations grew longer, glances lingered. I started looking for reasons to stay late at work. One more draft to review, one more chart to perfect, anything that allowed me to exist in the same space as him for just a little longer. At home, Daniel noticed. "You've been tired lately," he said one evening, his voice gentle but curious. "Everything okay at work?" I lied before I could think. "Just deadlines." "It's nothing," he nodded, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. The guilt came in waves, sharp, then dull, then gone altogether when Ethan's name lit up my phone. One Friday evening, he offered me a ride home. The city was washed in gold, the streets gleaming from a recent storm. Inside his car, the air smelled faintly of rain and cedarwood. The radio played something slow, a song I didn't know but never wanted to end. We talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, broken promises, the way people change without meaning to. His tone was soft, reflective. "Do you ever feel," he said, eyes on the road, "like you're living someone else's life?" The question hit harder than I expected. "Every day," I whispered. He looked at me then, just a glance, but long enough for me to see everything I'd been denying, the loneliness, the hunger, the unspoken understanding that what we wanted could ruin us both. When we stopped outside my house, neither of us moved. The world outside felt far away. Daniel, my marriage, the life I'd built on duty and silence. "I should go," I said finally, my voice barely a breath. Ethan nodded, but didn't unlock the doors. His hand brushed mine again. An accident, maybe. Or maybe not. My pulse betrayed me, racing faster than reason could follow. He didn't lean closer. He didn't need to. The tension filled the space between us like static, humming, alive. For a moment, I imagined what it would feel like if I didn't stop him, if I just let it happen, but I didn't. Not that night. When I stepped out of the car, my legs trembled. Not from fear, but from knowing. The line we'd been dancing around wasn't invisible anymore. It was right there, waiting, and the next time, I knew I wouldn't walk away. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a special day, not a romantic one, just another ordinary Tuesday that decided to change everything. The office was quiet, most of the team gone for the evening. Outside, a storm brewed, streaks of lightning flashing faintly against the windows. I was at my desk, finishing a report I wasn't really reading. Ethan walked in without a word, 2 cups of coffee in hand, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. "Thought you could use this," he said, placing one beside me. "Thanks," I murmured, not looking up. I couldn't. The air felt too thick, too charged. He leaned against the desk beside me. "You've been distant." "I've been busy," I said automatically, but my voice cracked under the weight of the lie. He sighed softly. "You don't have to pretend with me, Lauren." That did it. The tenderness in his tone, the quiet certainty that made me feel seen in a way Daniel hadn't in years. My throat tightened. "Ethan," I whispered, shaking my head. "We can't keep doing this. It's not fair to anyone." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "Then tell me to stop." I tried. I really did, but the words tangled in my chest. Trapped between guilt and need. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from my face, and for a heartbeat, everything inside me went still. When our lips met, it wasn't fireworks. It was relief, a slow unraveling of everything I'd been holding together. His hands framed my face gently, reverently, as though he understood the cost of what we were breaking. For a moment, the world outside disappeared. No marriage, no rules, no consequences. Just breath, warmth, and the quiet pulse of something forbidden finally finding air. Then, as he pulled me closer, the words escaped me before I could stop them. "Don't stop," I whispered. And I wasn't pleading for him. I was pleading for the feeling, the reminder that I was still alive, still capable of wanting, still capable of being wanted. When it was over, the silence that followed was almost unbearable. Ethan's eyes searched mine, gentle, questioning, guilty. "What happens now?" he asked softly. I didn't know. All I knew was that something irreversible had taken root. As I drove home that night, the rain poured harder, blurring the world outside my windshield. Daniel's car was already in the driveway. Through the window, I saw him reading on the couch, unaware of what I'd left behind in that office. Unaware that his wife had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know which version of myself I'd become. The woman who lied or the woman who finally told the truth through her sins. Days turned into weeks, but time didn't move forward. It circled. Every morning I woke beside Daniel, pretending the world hadn't changed. That I hadn't. I cooked, smiled, went to work, and performed the quiet rituals of a faithful wife, even as guilt hummed beneath my skin like static. Ethan and I barely spoke after that night. The few times our paths crossed, the air between us carried too much. Memory, restraint, shame. He avoided my eyes, I avoided his. Our connection, once electric, had curdled into silence. One evening, Daniel found my phone face down on the kitchen counter. He wasn't the type to snoop, but something in his expression told me he already knew. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe love, even when broken, recognizes betrayal before words confirm it. "Who is he?" he asked quietly, my breath caught. I wanted to lie. To protect him. Or maybe to protect the version of me that still believed I could undo what I'd done. But lies suddenly felt too heavy to carry. "Ethan," I said. Just his name. Nothing more. Daniel didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He just looked at me, really looked, as though he was trying to see where the woman he'd married had gone. His silence hurt more than anger ever could. "I didn't mean to," I whispered, though we both knew intent didn't matter anymore. He nodded slowly, eyes glassy but calm. "None of us ever mean to," he said, then walked out of the room. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the ticking clock the only sound. The house felt foreign. Every picture frame, every cup, every shadow belonged to a life that no longer fit. I thought about Ethan, about how something that had once felt like salvation had become a scar I'd always carry. In the weeks that followed, Daniel didn't leave, but he didn't come back either. Not really. We existed side by side, polite strangers in shared silence. Sometimes he'd make 2 cups of coffee in the morning, place one in front of me, and leave for work without a word. It was his way of saying there was still something left. Not forgiveness, but maybe the faint shape of it. And me? I stopped looking for love in other people's eyes. I started writing again. Nothing profound, just words that helped me remember who I was before routine and regret defined me. Sometimes, when the rain falls and the world feels still, I think of that night, the thunder, the taste of coffee, the tremor in my voice when I whispered, "Don't stop." If I could go back, I don't know what I'd change. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But I've learned this much. Desire doesn't destroy you. Denial does. And sometimes, the hardest part of love isn't losing someone else. It's finding your way back to yourself.